Hello, my name is Matthew Yakov, and today we will review a new Concerto interface version 11.3.1. There was a lot of new enhancement in the system, and let's begin with the view menu. View menu is a unified menu which can show you the view for the remote access, for the security overall on your system, and the SD-WAN connections between your branches. So let's begin with the secure access, ZTNA, and VSA connections. In here, we can see that in total we have 3 active users. We have this many successful attempts to connect, these many failed attempts to connect, and here we have some of the statistics, which of the gateways were used most of the time. So like for example, statistics by the concurrent users, how many users were on each of the gateways at a certain period of time. Once again, this is a test system which shows only 2 users. In the real world, it's going to be like hundreds, something thousands of users. The same is going to be for the attempts, where you can see which of the users couldn't connect, which could connect, the failed attempts, and so on and so forth. Also, in the screen, you will see the other menus, such as statistics per user. Like, for example, which of the gateways had most of the users connected to them. Like, for example, this one had only 2 users connected at all of the time, and within the last 7 days, this one had 3 users, and so on. We can see where they were connecting mostly from. We will see which cities and which country they were connecting from, and we can even see in more details, for example, on the London gateway, which users were connecting at what time. We can even drill down deeper to see information when specifically this user had certain traffic over this gateway and what was the connection from, and so on. Furthermore, we can see information in more details about the logs, about the authentication, when the users were authenticating, what was the successful or unsuccessful attempts to authenticate, where they were connecting from, and much more details. In the security menu, we will see information about the, first of all, most common rules, which were security rules which were applied on the system and hit by the secure access and by the SD-WAN devices. We can see the categories of the most common applications, most common URL categories which were used on the system, most common rules for our clients for the SD-WAN traffic, and so on and so forth. If we want, we can always go into more details and see specifically when each of these requests were going in more often, and how much bandwidth they consume during that time. And of course, if we want to, we can change the view based on the number of sessions that was involved during a certain period of time, or the volume of the traffic or bandwidth that was consumed. So next, in the security, we have a lot of different options. So there's going to be a firewall view, which will show you in much more details which firewall rules were used. We can see who was using those rules, when they were specifically more actively used, and so on. Many other capabilities, including data loss prevention, private app protection, and others are going to be available in here. As well as in the secure access, we'll be able to see our sites, where they are located, what are the most common sites, which sites have problems currently, they will be marked as red, and it means that they are down, and we have a couple of sites which are up and running at this moment. We'll be able to see the top sites by the bandwidth, top sites by the circuit utilization, and of course top applications that are used by all of the sites. Actually, here we see the YouTube was the most commonly used application across all the appliances that we have in our system. Next, after the overall view that we can see in the system, we can see also the historical analysis. Historical, which will show in much more details, first of all, the availability of each of the gateways or each of the sites over the period of time. We can see the site availability, we can see the link availability on each of them, heat map, which of the sites were most available or not available. We can see similar things in the in the security and other menus. But next, let's review the configuration menu. In the configuration menu, we have 2 menus where we can configure our remote access or secure service edge and SD-WAN services. So 2 menus. In the secure service edge, you can apply your rules which can be applicable for the internet protection or secure web gateway, and for the ZTNA private app protection. In each of them, we can of course create our custom profiles for the IPS, for the malware protection, for the data loss prevention, for the cloud access security broker, and so on. Like an example of how you can create your custom rule for the CASB. So here we can just specify that these applications such as Box and Facebook, we want to allow only to log in, search, and share, but we don't want to allow to upload and download files. The same on the Facebook, we're only allowing to log in, but we don't allow to upload anything, to post anything, or to download any files from it, and so on. So, and then you can just specify what is going to be the default action, and after that, give a name to this rule and specify what is going to be the login parameters. So later on, when we configure our custom profiles, if we want to configure them, we can apply them either to the internet protection or to the private application protections. In the internet protection, we can create new rules, where we first of all specify to which applications this rule is going to be applicable. Maybe it's going to be application groups such as all Amazon applications or all Box applications, or maybe all Google applications, all Office 365, and so on and so forth. Or maybe we can want to do this on the particular applications. Like in this case, we can select out of 3,800 applications, almost 3,900 applications. Like, for example, in the YouTube, you have the granularity of the YouTube HD, YouTube for kids. For example, you can block your regular YouTube HD, and music and TV, and leave only for the kids. This will be very useful for the school districts where they want to only allow available content specifically for their users, for the kids. Or similarly, it can be based on the application categories such as IoT devices, advertisement, and so on and so forth. Anyway, if we don't select anything, it means that we are doing the match on all of the applications. But instead of this, we can do selection based on the users, and we can specify that maybe it's applicable to these user groups, or maybe to these specific users which belong to certain other user groups, and we can specify for which specific users connecting to this gateway this will be applicable. Actually, sorry, let's go back to the rule. So we selected applications, then we can select our users. Next, we can select what is going to be the endpoint protection profile. Endpoint protection profile is the one where you can define that. For example, we want to allow and we want to make sure that we have browsers, and the browsers should be only Chrome or some others. And if the user doesn't have this Chrome browser, we will not allow to connect. Or if it doesn't have specific version, we might not allow to connect. So there's a lot of granularity of what can be configured, such as version of the browser, the anti-malware software installed, the anti-phishing, custom application data loss prevention software installed, firewall versions, like a general such as OS version and others, patches, even the patches which are on your Windows or Mac OS machines can be checked, and based on the state on the user machine when they are connecting, you can create different rules for those users. And by the way, we pull information from the SASE clients using which customers connecting to the gateways every 5 minutes. So every 5 minutes, this rule can be reapplied with the new polling information, profiling information that we downloaded from the client. Anyway, next, we can specify to which geolocations we are applying these rules. For example, we might say that if somebody is connecting outside of the United States, such as from maybe Russia or maybe from China or from somewhere else, we want to provide some kind of restricted access. So, and this is possible to do in our case, and just so you have granularity, first of all, based on the source where it is coming from and the destination where the users are going to be going to, like maybe you want to block access to certain locations, to certain countries or cities. Of course, you can also create your schedulers when this rule will be working. Maybe it's going to be working only during weekends or weekdays. You can specify from which to which zones this is applicable, or select certain services. Services, basically, it's a top of 5 selection based on the port numbers, such as HTTP service, or maybe your SMTP service, RIP, and so on and so forth, TCP. So there are multiple services available to you to select from. So after we selected all those parameters, applications, user groups to which is going to be applicable, geolocations, and so on, we can specify whether we silently allow this traffic, maybe we want to drop this traffic, or we want to send the reject message to the user who's trying to attempt the access to those applications and with this profile, Or maybe we want to allow access but do certain protection, such as malware protection, or maybe IPS IDS protection, and here we can specify different profiles, such as all attack profiles, or maybe a profile for the Linux protection, or maybe for the Versa branch protection, which has certain specific IPS vulnerabilities or recommended vulnerabilities from the Versa network. So you can select from the DNS filtering, from the file filtering, from the IP filtering based on the well-known IP addresses of the spam sources, web attacks, scanners, DDoS locations, and so on and so forth. So a lot of granularity, and of course you can also apply things such as cloud access, security broker, or data loss prevention for that traffic. So this is just a review of what can be configured in terms of the configuration of the remote access. Also, when your users are connecting to the system, like for example, when the client machine will be connecting, we can define different type of split tunnels. We can say that only certain applications will be sent to the cloud gateways, or maybe everything except certain applications will be sent to the cloud gateways, or maybe we want to deny all the traffic based on the match conditions which are going next. Anyway, let's assume that with this option, the default behavior is to send all the traffic from the user device to the Versa cloud gateway, except certain applications. So in this case, we'll select that we want these gateways to be available for those users. We want on the client to have configuration with these, for example, IP addresses available to the user. We want to configure our client in the way that we want to allow them customization. We can specify what is going to be the custom logo. So here, Versa logo, you can replace it to anything else in your system. As an example, I'm going to show you my client. 1 second. Here is the client, and here is the here's the example of the menu. So here I changed the logo to Matthew. Here the logo is going to be Versa Networks. Here the logo might be something else, and so on and so forth. So by providing just the URL, this URL will be used to download information from the internet and push it to the user client with your logo. There are advanced settings which allows you to, first of all, specify whether we want to allow or not allow user to disconnect from the system, how often we want to allow them to reconnect, whether we want to monitor the tunnel with advanced monitoring or not. Do we even allow connection to the internet or not allow? For example, with the fail close operations, user will not even going to be able to connect to the internet if they are not connected to the Versa Cloud Gateway. So, and only after connection, they will get access to the internet. Similarly, in the fail open, they always able to connect if they are not connected to the cloud gateway, and if they are connected to the cloud gateway, they just protect it. So later on, after the user configuration, we can configure other things such as how do we want to track this user based on which of the EAP agents or EAP profiles. So whether we want to only specify only specific categories of vendor or only specific categories of browsers and users to be allowed to use these gateways and this client configuration. Later on, so let's say that we'll go to the device status. Here we can do modification and do selection based on the MDM compatibility or MDM state of the device. We may allow all the devices connect, or we may allow devices only on managed devices to connect, or maybe manage devices with a certain condition or certain compliant state. So in addition to this, of course, EAP information profile which we can gather from the users, things such as which operating system we're allowing to connect to us, which users we're allowing to connect and have these gateways, this client configuration, and so on, and from where we're allowing them to connect. Maybe we want to only allow connecting to our gateways from a specific locations. And of course, we can review and just give a name to this profile for those users to connect to us. So this was the remote access connectivity and how we can configure SWG and ZTNA connections. In the secure SD-WAN section, we have our profiles or the templates. These templates, we can modify them and check connectivity. For example, in each of the templates, We can select how our branch will look like. We can add additional interfaces such as, for example, okay, let's create a new one. Let's create a new interface which we'll call MPLS. We'll say that this MPLS will be connected to this port, and from this port, connection name is MPLS. It should be DHCP receiving IP address. We can actually specify on the previous state like what are going to be the static routes, or if it's a static connection, we can specify what is going to be the dynamic routing protocol such as eBGP with the neighbors, IBGP, OSPF connections, and so on. So later on, we can configure the QoS settings, what is going to be the shaping rate, what is going to be the interface scheduler with the different traffic classes and permissions for those interfaces. Similarly, we can configure our LAN interfaces and our Wi-Fi connections. After we configure it, what is going to be here, and by the way, check it out. On this screen, everything that we're doing is in the wizard format. So we don't need to know where should we go. We just click next, 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 and system is guiding us through the configuration. It's very easy to configure. Even here, if we want to select whether we want to allow a split tunnel to allow internet access or only SD-WAN connection, we easily just click on this device and that's it. So on the next screen, system allows us to configure certain security rules. Security rules, for example, where you want to block something or allow something, you can add new rules or select the existing one. So let's see one of the existing rules. So this rule right now is disabled. We can enable it. We can see the criteria. Criteria is based on the URL categories. The action is to reject these URL categories, which are news and media. So similarly, you can create additional rules in the firewall. So let's say that rule 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And add multiple criteria such as application, time interval, URL categories. In the applications, once again, you have 3,900 applications from which you can select. You can have multiple criteria and they will have AND condition between them. And then you can define what is going to be the action for this application, whether it's going to be a deny traffic or maybe chain it to one of the security platforms such as antivirus, IPS, URL filtering, or IP filtering for your users. So after we configured our security rules, we can go next and configure our QoS and traffic steering. In the traffic steering, we once again can either select existing rules if we already pre-created them previously, or configure a new one. So let's say traffic steering one rule, again, based on the criteria. Where is it coming from? For example, from the zone LAN, or maybe from the LTE zone, from the internet, or from the SD-WAN zone. Everything that comes to this branch from the SD-WAN, the action should be maybe drop this traffic or allow this traffic, or maybe we want to this traffic which is going to the SD-WAN or from the SD-WAN to have certain forwarding profile which will have certain conditioning such as we want to use Internet 1 and Internet 2 as two main circuits, and then we want to add another condition which will say that MPLS and MPLS2 should be the second priority. We of course can rearrange them, or maybe we want to select what is going to be the connection which we will always avoid and never want to use, and have it in here. So similarly, we can add the new term for which path we want to select this. Maybe we want to select the conditioning for the direct internet connection and which of the connections we want to use. Maybe we want to have a load balancing across multiple connections, or maybe it's an SD-WAN policy, or maybe we want to add additional term when we want to select that we want to always enable forward error correction and replication when the SLA is violated. Or maybe we want to always have them enabled if it's a very important traffic for your CEO. Similarly, you can configure the TCP optimization. TCP optimization, which will allow you to optimize the traffic and have much faster TCP processing between the sites in the system. So this is the basic configuration of the traffic steering. So later on, you can configure your DHCP, CGNet options. By the way, some interesting menus are going to be available in the enterprise, in the VPN instances, where you can configure what is going to be the type of this device, whether it's going to be a hub or branch. If it's a hub, whether we're allowed to have direct internet access or not. If it's a branch, what is going to be the type of the configuration here. Is it going to be a full mesh, or maybe hub and spoke, or maybe spoke to spoke via hub, and so on. And this is how you configure your topologies. But once again, take a look. We have the next settings where we just go in next into, and system is guiding us through the configuration. After we have the configuration ready, we can just go to the deploy menu. We can go to any of the sites, and on this site we can just say that we want to add the new hub or some other device. So let's say hub 123 with the serial number this one, model, let's say this one, and so let's say that profile that we want to apply is the one which we created with a certain version. And by the way, every time we modify our template, it creates a new version. So you will always see what was the previous version, and you can always apply previous version to your system. And we say that this is going to be applied to this profile. So then okay, of course, we need to select the bandwidth. So region selection mandatory. So system is saying that we will need to configure later the region, but it's gonna guide us through this. So since the next step when we will click on the gear, it's saying that pending variables. So it means that we need to enter some information about the Wi-Fi name and the password. What should be the password here, or what should be? Okay, it needs to be minimum 8 characters. What should be the IP address we want to use on the LAN? So anyway, system is guiding you through all of the configurations. Now, a couple other cool menus are going to be the monitor screen. The monitor screen, which will show you, for example, the connections where you have the highest latency right now, or maybe you can see all of your branches in the comp view to see where they are located. Or if you have too many of those branches, you can see them in the role view, and you can search through them. So similarly, you can see this for the applications, for the topologies. For example, in the topology where we can see the site between which we have the highest latency, or where we use the most direct internet access, or where we have the network traffic at all in which of the regions. So, and if we want to see more details, we can click on any of them and just go inside of each of them and see much more details of what was happening at certain period of time and which circuits was used on each of those locations for the access. So similarly, in the security here, specifically for the SD-WAN, we can see information about the most common applications, most common URL reputation, and other parameters. So in the view menu, we saw the security for all the operations, meaning for the remote access, for the SD-WAN, and everything else. In the monitor, you will see information about your SD-WAN connections mostly. So similarly, in the deployment, you will see which devices and where they are mostly deployed and how are they processed. So similarly, if we want to go to any of the devices and see, for example, this device, and maybe let's go and see what is happening in here. We want to monitor this appliance and see in more details what is happening exactly right now on this device. So we can do things such as ping from this device from certain VRFs. We can do TCP dump to collect information on one of the interfaces, and then the system will allow us to download the PCAP file. We can see the summary of what interfaces are available right now, and we can even see the real-time data of what traffic is passing through those interfaces. And by the way, this gateway has multiple tenants. So right now we will see only information for our specific tenant. And you can just select which interfaces you want to see this information from. Of course, things such as BGP configurations, your neighbors in, for example, in the control VRF or in any other VRF, where they are connecting, how many routes was sent or received, which prefixes we are advertising in each of the VRFs, in each of the address families and so on, and receiving. So a lot of useful information is going to be available in this menu. Analytics screen remains the same as it was in the previous versions. So basically, we can have the historical parameters of, let's see here, in the Matia tenant. So how many sites we had. In each of them, we can see information about the availability, about the usage, about the circuits which were used in there, about the users or most commonly used users in here. So some of them you'll see as IP addresses. That's when user was not authenticated. In some cases, you will see the username when user was authenticated connecting to the system. So, and you can see who of them or which of these users were consuming most of the data. And let's say that we want to see this in the area format. So this is actually going to be a little more convenient. So this user consumed very little data. Of course, for each of the users, if you want to drill down, you can just go and see in more details when specifically he was consuming some data, what kind of application that user on this device was consuming, and here you can see much more details how much data from each of them it was downloading. And this information is available in the granularity of 7 days, 30 days, 30 minutes, 5 minutes, or custom range, whatever you want. So in addition to this, you'll see information about all the alarms, all the firewall logs, all the other information, and the cool thing is that you can build your own reports. So for example, in here, let's select my tenant. So in my tenant, I maybe want to see the sites on which I had the most sessions. Okay, so in that example, let's see, maybe not this site usage, maybe let's see top application usage and top application based on the bandwidth. So here we have the top application based on the bandwidth, and maybe we want to also add some security information in this report. And in this report, we want to see, let's say, secure access, users, authentication, user activity. So let's say user activity, no bad example, let's say, okay, secure access statistics. Good. Concurrent users, and we want to see this in this format. So here we had during the last day this many attempts, and now system will allow us to download this report. So download it in the certain format where we can open it and view exactly as it was on the analytics screen. But the cool thing is that you can save this report, schedule it to run periodically, and specify to which emails you want to send them, so that users don't even need to log into the system to see this analytics report. Last couple of menus which are going to be available to you is the menu with all the devices, where you can select them based on the model number, software version, and others. You can upgrade the device from this menu, upgrade security package, OS security package, and other parameters, or just upload or download the list of your devices somewhere else in the CSV format if you would want to do this. So this was a brief overview of the new Concerto interface. I hope this was informative for you, and thank you for watching.